It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica, and welcome to Draft Day. Coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft from Las Vegas starts with Titans Radio at 6 p.m., with the draft officially getting underway at 7. But stay tuned to 104.5 The Zone all day for coverage presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans in the lead-up to the first name being called by Roger Goodell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans, of course, pick at 26. Titans picked up the fifth-year option for defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons on Wednesday, locking him in for over $10 million in 2023. Simmons made his first career Pro Bowl in 2021 after a career-high 8.5 sacks. Around the league, the Arizona Cardinals picked up the fifth-year option for Kyler Murray on Wednesday. The Nashville Predators recalled goaltender Connor Ingram from the Milwaukee Admirals on Wednesday. They will be without UC Saros for the final 2 regular season games of the year after Saros suffered a non-contact leg injury in the overtime loss to Calgary on Tuesday. No update on Saros' long-term availability for the postseason. The Preds do have a spot clinched and will take on a potential first-round opponent tonight at the Colorado Avalanche at 8 p.m. puck drop. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Beautiful, beautiful day here in Middle Tennessee. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Congratulations to you, to Lucas Panzica, to all of us. I'm going to congratulate myself. Good morning. I'm Buck Reising. This is our radio show. Congratulations to all of us. A round of applause. Give it to me, Lucas. Yes. Yes, thank the merciful football gods. Draft day is upon us. What, is there background noise in that too? That's the first time we've let the applause play out. What are they chirping about in the background? That's
Who
weird.
the Titans are going to take?
Oh.
Who's it going to be?
No more mock drafts. No more mock drafts. God, I'm so happy this is almost over. Now, here's the thing. I love the NFL draft. I love the process of roster construction. I love learning about the different players and various team philosophies. I love the business of football. But this 3 months leading up to this godforsaken event, I am so happy that the day is finally upon us, because I can only tell you about a list of names at every position so many times. Truly I can. And we don't have to do that anymore. Tonight, well, watch, they'll trade out, and this will all be for naught, and I'll have to talk about more players that we don't know are going to play for the Tennessee Titans yet tomorrow. But regardless, this looks to be and will be a very exciting day one way or the other. Now, Lucas is fed up with the draft just entirely. You were kind of pissy this morning when I walked in here. You're spitting rage at Adam Schefter, or not at Adam Schefter, but at anonymous team reports, executive reports coming from Adam Schefter. You're screaming at me about mock drafts and things like this. As soon as I walk in, I haven't had breakfast, I haven't had my coffee yet, and you're in a fit of rage. What's wrong with you?
I wish the dumbest thing in sports this week was today, but we'll get to it.
Plenty of time. Good energy. We love to see it. I am very, very excited to be at the Titans practice facility today. I'm going to be camped out there for 3 days. John Robinson and Mike Vrabel are going to have to kick my ass out the door by Saturday evening, because we are going to be entrenched, embedded in the practice facility, getting this draft. I mean, this is the first normal draft that I've done since 2019. Since this thing was here in Nashville a couple of years ago.
And I don't know if you would call that normal, right? Because it was here in Nashville.
No, it was a nightmare, honestly, just from a work standpoint. Now, from an event standpoint, and frankly, from the, what do you call the, it's a term used in combat that, not friendly fire, but like casualties that you did not intend for. There's a word for that. You know what I'm saying?
Nope. Reading a book about Stonewall Jackson right now, and I have not seen that word in there.
Okay, well, I'll come up with it at some point. But just to recall, I just DM'd you, Lucas, the sound that I would like to play of the the casualties that were the unforeseen casualties of the 2019 Nashville NFL Draft that still brings me great joy every time I see this audio. And there's a Twitter account called No Context Titans that does so well to find these clips, these random clips. For example, like a bachelorette party, planning the whole thing out, bride tribe, T-shirts abound. Everybody's excited. They're going to get wasted on Broadway for 3 days on a long weekend. And then what happens?
And it just changes, like, the crowd, like, what you're here for. Like, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of football guys. No. Like, I'm good. I already have to watch football on Sundays. I don't need to see any more of that.
Oh, no, sweetie, you forgot the NFL Draft was in Nashville this weekend. What a pity.
That's happening in Vegas now, right?
Oh, pissed.
It definitely is.
People are pissed.
Like, what's the second biggest bachelorette capital of the world?
I mean, we're first, right?
Yeah, like, Nashville's got to be first at this point. But Vegas has got to be a close second.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people who did not anticipate the NFL Draft taking over their city. It is a beautiful day. Collateral damage. Thank you, Rich Ferris of our promotions department that has just texted me that. Collateral damage. Yes, collateral damage, the Bachelorettes. And all of this, no more collateral damage. No more mock drafts, no more none of it. We made it. Now, the thing that everybody's going to monitor, and by the way, I didn't give out the phone number. If you would like to talk about this draft, about the Tennessee Titans draft prospects, about anything you want to get off your chest on this first round of the NFL Draft this year, 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045. You are more than welcome to join our conversation today. Now, let's turn our attention locally, shall we? Because kind of opened up the week with this and just kind of doing, reading the material that Titans PR is always so good to provide to us as far as the resources, the information, the historical data that they go through and they pull for a lot of us. Turns out a lot. How many phone calls did you just get? Was that just people about collateral damage? What happened?
5 phone calls from people telling us the word we're looking for is collateral damage.
Thank you. See, the audience always there for us. Always there for us when we need help, and always there for us when they want to step on my neck about something that I've said. So we appreciate you guys. 615-737-1045. If you want to do anything other than correct my lack of vocabulary today. But the attention turns to John Robinson, right? This is another opportunity. This is another shot heading into year 7 of his tenure as the general manager here to find an impact player in the first round of the NFL Draft. Now, if they trade back, obviously this is nullified. Now, if they trade out of the first round, even more so. But assuming, which is not a safe assumption, but assuming that they stick and pick at 26th overall, this will be yet another opportunity, an 8th try in 7 possible first rounds that he is drafted in. Remember, because they had 2 in 2017 was the Corey Davis and Adoree Jackson draft, because Jack Conklin was 16, and that was his first. So 8 attempts in 7 years drafting for the Tennessee Titans to add an impact player. Of those 7 picks that have already been made, only one of them has really materialized in a way that's clear and obvious to everyone. And it's the one that they they got a huge break with. Jeffrey Simmons. All of us can agree that Jeff, whose 5th-year option was picked up yesterday at about 3 o'clock when the transactions typically come down, Jeff was never supposed to be there at 19. Never. That caliber of player does not exist outside of the top 5 in any given NFL draft. And it's even funnier to think about the guys who were picked in front of him. Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins, who's a fine player in Miami, just got his 5th-year option picked up today. And Dexter Lawrence, who hasn't had much of Giants have had decent defenses in the last couple of years, but I think we can all agree Dexter Lawrence out of Clemson, 2 picks ahead of Jeffrey Simmons, was foolish by any stretch of the imagination. Even if you were uncertain, or even if you had not, you did not feel 100% solid in the reasons why somebody like Jeff would be sitting there at 19. Other than that, we haven't seen a first-round pick under John Robinson make it to a second contract. Jeff will, in all likelihood. Caleb Farley, TBD. So we got 6 of 7 picks that we have a pretty good feel for and 5 of the 7 who had yet to see a second contract here in Tennessee. Now, that doesn't mean that Corey Davis and Adoree Jackson, Rashaan Evans, and Jack Conklin, that doesn't mean that those players have not been serviceable. And, the exception being Isaiah Wilson, get the hell out of here as quickly as humanly possible. Producer Reed on my A to Z Sports Primetime show pulled the clip of John talking about Isaiah Wilson after they had placed him on the non-football injury list, and just to have such a stark reminder of how down bad that thing was. That you have to, we may go the rest of our lives paying attention to NFL football and not see as big a disaster as Isaiah was in the first round ever again. That was a pretty catastrophic situation for a variety of different reasons. So attention turns to John. And the thing with John Robinson, fairly or unfairly, almost any opinions that will be developed about this draft class will be solely predicated on what happens tonight, on how they manage tonight, whether that's a trade back and the picks that materialize from a potential trade out, whether that is the place that they currently select, or if they decide to get a little frisky, it would be, I think, unrealistic, but to see any kind of a trade up for a player. It's not without precedent. John is very comfortable moving around. We've seen him do it with a class like, 2018, with Rashaan Evans, Harold Landry, Dane Cruikshank, and Luke Falk, right? 4-man draft class. 2 of those players you traded up to get. So it's not without precedent, but we understand that the needs are a bit more dire. In 2018, that was Mike Vrabel's first year, you felt pretty good about the situation that the Titans roster was in. Not to say that this is not a definitively better roster than they've had for several years. I think that the instant impact is such a necessity, though, because of the side of the ball that they need it to happen on, because of all of the things that will be predicated on this offense this year, how they will be judged, which is provided health, which is not a given, clearly, can they find ways to recoup Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill in some form or fashion? Even as you don't want tonight to be about those 2 guys or even about the quarterback, you're sick of it. You're tired of hearing of it. That's what this is about, as much as it is adding football players, new football players, young, talented players to this football team. It's about how they salvage the rest of it, how they build upon and find ways to keep this thing competitive while the window gets smaller and smaller every day. I think for John's part, the first round stuff, it's fair criticism, right? I am somebody who is totally fine with the idea that Rashaan Evans didn't get a second contract here, given the way that thing played out. I was fine with them not paying Corey Davis, with the fact that they had A.J. Brown as a second-round pick. You can do well in the first round. You can draft serviceable players, but at some point, one of them needs to stick. A couple of them need to stick, and Jeff will be the most recent example of that. But all eyes on John Robinson tonight as we enter the first round of this NFL draft. Titans radio coverage is going to be spectacular. It begins at 6 p.m. tonight. I'm going to be at the facility for the next 3 days. It's going to be a great time had by all. The draft is underway, and we're happy to take your reaction to it. 615-737-1045 is how you do so. I'm Buck Reising. It's 1045 The Zone.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Welcome back. We are having ourselves a day. Hope you are too. It's a beautiful day in sunny, scenic Nashville, Tennessee. It's draft day, kids. We're having a time of it. Now, we're going to do, Lucas Panzica has painstakingly dug through all of Jimmy Wyatt's mock draft roundups. He has come up with the percentages of positions selected for the Tennessee Titans at 26th overall. We will get to that shortly because it's been painstaking work, and we're happy to send that work into the sun in just a second. But as far as the draft is concerned, T-Bull22 has tweeted both us and J. Mart Ramon. The draft takes too long, in my opinion. If I wanted to see 32 picks in 3 hours, I'd just watch Tannehill in the playoffs.
Boo! Boo!
Bravo, Jonathan Schefter. You are excused. It does take an eternal long time. What was Farley last year? Farley was 22 overall, and they made that pick at like 9:58 last night.
May I say something?
Yes, you may.
Listening to you gripe about doing a job that so many people would walk over dead bodies to have, little gratitude.
Sure, but also no. No.
That's the Buck I know and love.
That's not how this works. No. I can enjoy it. I can love it. I can be truly appreciative of it. And I can also think the last 3 months have been a lot of words I can't say on the radio.
You suck, Buck!
All right, back into the shadows, Schefter. So, Caleb Farley at 22, 9:58 p.m. last night. It does take an incredible long time. And here's the thing. I think that this thing is going to stretch out. I think that this thing is going to stretch out in a way that painstaking is not the word, but whether it adds to suspense in the NFL draft process or makes it interminable, that's entirely up to you. But as far as I'm concerned, there seems to be a situation, a report from Adam Schefter that we'll get to later on in the show about how executives are approaching this draft and how they view it, as far as nobody seems to know what anybody else is going to do this year. Hell, the Jags internally don't seem to know what they are going to do this year, and they've got the most obvious one in theory. So that will give you the Adam Schefter report later on in the show. But let's do this. Let's do this final mock draft roundup of the year. Do you have special effects? Do you have fireworks? Do you have applause? What do you have back there?
Nope, I have no production to go with this.
Excellent.
What do you project out of 30 picks, rounded up, of course, by Jim Wyatt?
Yep.
I think it was mock draft roundup 8.0.
He's sick.
Of 2022. National columnists and quote-unquote experts, largely. He does a local one that I don't think has come out yet. So,
because they were all stupid, and Jimmy texted everybody who's been within 75 feet of the facility in the last, 10 years.
Out of 30 draft picks for the Titans at 26, what do you project is the most commonly mocked position?
I would project that offensive line, I'm not going to discern between tackle or guard, but I would say that the offensive line is the most commonly projected selection. Excellent. Look at that. Production.
Out of 30, how many do you think mocked an offensive lineman to the Titans at 26?
I would say 12.
You read this.
No, I didn't read this. How would I have? Whoa, look at me.
It's 12.
Maybe I should do a mock draft.
40% of the 30 mock drafts that Jimmy Wyatt rounded up had an offensive lineman to the Titans at 26. Second most commonly drafted position at 26.
You think, I love Jimmy to death, and I'll read Jimmy on a regular basis, but the one thing that I do not want to have sear my eyeballs is other people's mock draft roundups.
Fair enough.
I can't do it.
Second most, probably a pretty easy answer.
Wide receiver.
How many?
Hmm.
Out of 30. And so 12 picked an offensive lineman.
Oh, God.
So
we're going to have to do math on the air.
How many does that leave?
Give me 8.
18. 18. That leaves 18. You say 8.
8 wide receivers.
11 out of the 30 mocked, which is, last time it was 5.
Yeah.
5 wide receivers,
Yeah.
which I thought was a low number. So you've got 11 wide receivers, 37%. And beyond that, what do you think is the third most mocked position to the Titans?
I hope inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It is 6 out of the
What?
36. I thought a high number. Last time it was 1 or 2. 6, almost all, obviously, Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean.
Who are the 6? Can we name names?
Ooh, yes.
Are these people with platforms of substance?
Yes.
Are these people who are regarded as actual NFL insiders, as people who pay attention to the comings and goings of the NFL, people who are supposed to be informed?
Yes. Titans Twitter's favorite, Adam Rank
Yes.
of NFL.com. Nakobe Dean to the Titans.
People hate Adam Rank.
Lance Zierlein of NFL.com as well. Devin Lloyd to the Titans. Peter Schrager of NFL Network, a tight end guy. Nakobe Dean to the Titans.
The NFL Network is conspiring against Titans fans to make them as mad as all hell in the offseason.
Clarence Hill of the Star Telegram, not sure who that is. Devin Lloyd to the Titans. And Mark Maskey, projecting an inside linebacker of the Washington Post, by the way. Also Nakobe Dean to the Titans.
Okay. So what's left?
What's left is quarterback and only 2. Mocked the Titans, which I thought was a low number.
Who are the bold and the brave individuals who selected quarterback at 26th overall?
The bold and the brave include, I'm scrolling. Who do you think?
What do you? That's not a good way to stall.
Okay, Will Brinson of CBS
Who do you
Sports
think?
has Desmond Ridder. Eddie Brown of the San Diego Union Tribune. Everybody's tuning in to find out what the San Diego Union Tribune is mocking to the Titans at 26.
Do not dismiss them.
Eddie Brown says Kenny Pickett.
Okay, if it's Kenny Pickett, okay, let's immediately dismiss the San Diego Tribune.
It's Kenny Pickett at 26.
I don't know, man. I mean, we'll talk about the quarterback situation later. So here's the most likely scenario, okay? And we'll be able to talk because people are just dog cussing everybody at NFL Network and the San Diego Tribune guy who selected Kenny Pickett to the Titans.
It's better than running back. I think you had one selecting Breece Hall of Iowa State in the first round to the Titans. That's still the most laughable one of the offseason.
So I wonder what goes through the minds of people who are, because I'm going to assume that all of these individuals collectively, because I think the number varies between 25 and 30 people that Jimmy pulls these things from. And again, mercifully, this ends today so that we can move on with our lives until next year when the cycle continues and just starts to rot our brains again. I would imagine that at least 25 of these individuals who are being polled by Jim on this are being asked to do mock drafts with some kind of frequency, right? Whether it's, I can't imagine it's every week, maybe one a month, maybe 2 a month leading up to the NFL draft. But I imagine that there's a fair amount of mock drafts produced by each and every one of the individuals who you've just laid out. I wonder how, I'm always fascinated by the approach because I have considered doing mock draft. Do you even do like the Draft Network mock simulator?
Nope.
You don't go anywhere near that.
Nope.
Because that stuff's like black tar heroin to football fans.
No, I will read mock drafts to see where guys are projected, right? Like how they are viewed. But no, I find it just a useless exercise for me, myself, to go project who the, Rams are going to take at whatever 2 draft picks they have.
So I am also loath to do so. Now, it's not because, the mock draft simulator, it gives you a good idea of how things could play out. And, of course, all of this is predicated on their predictive model, which could be accurate. It could be complete and total bull. We don't know until we actually get into the first round. JTB on YouTube says 100% ESPN will have a way too early mock draft out Monday for next year. It never ends, Buck. Well, that's like Adam Schefter. You see what Adam Schefter did this morning? Not even the thing that offended you this morning that Adam Schefter did. Did you see what Adam Schefter tweeted this morning regarding this being the day of the NFL draft?
No.
So this from Schefter, it's probably around 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Yeah, it's 6:04 a.m. Eastern time. Adam Schefter tweets out at 5:04 a.m. local, big night tonight, of course, but there's also this.
Oh, yeah, I did see this.
364 days until the first round of the 2023 NFL draft in Kansas City. This is what I awoke to. And it made me want to throw my phone at the television in my bedroom with as much velocity as I have in my body because it made me so angry. And then, of course, people start to reply. People like our buddy Brad Willis, big night tonight, of course, but there's also this. I haven't had a regular bowel movement since week 2. This is the kind of things that are starting on the internet today. oh, good God, we've been spammed. Did you see the YouTube chat? We just got spammed. What happened there? It's like
Spammed with mock drafts?
Yeah, no, straight up spammed with mock drafts. Look at this. It's every Titans pick. I don't know how this is happening. It's somebody called After 5 on YouTube. We are straight up being spammed. Every Titans pick since 2000.
Oh, no.
With Keith Bullock at 30th overall. What fresh hell is this?
I've got to block him.
No, quickly take it. Well, that and the hot girls and boys video chat webcam has also made an appearance in the YouTube chat this evening or this morning. So, we're off to a red hot start.
It's because they keep getting engagement from you. Stop clicking on it.
No, After 5. I do not want every Titans first round draft pick. Get out of here, you bot. It's exhausting already. So, with this today, we'll talk about the uncertainty league-wide around this NFL draft. But as far as Tennessee is concerned, and we'll hone in on more on this later, you're going to hear from Charles Davis, who, of course, will be on the draft desk on NFL Network tonight. You'll hear from Jason Fintz, who's anchoring their ESPN draft coverage the next 3 days. Greg Cosell had a bunch of good things, and our buddy Sheil Kapadia on the subject of a quarterback here in Tennessee later on in the show. We're gonna pull all the parts and pieces from the last couple of weeks of draft coverage that we've done to kind of help us all formulate where we think they're going to go. Hopefully by 12:45 p.m. Central Time, by the time this radio show enters its final segment, we will at least have a better idea of what direction these guys are going to go. But the reality of the situation is there are only so many ways to blow this thing, right? Only so many. Now, what happens with the players once they get to the NFL, once they go through training camp, whether they fail or whether they succeed at this level, depending on, everything from geography to physical health, okay? All of these things come down to, all right, you got two needs, clearly and obviously, that if you're going to stick in the first round, that only make the most sense. Offensive line, probably first, and wide receiver second. You're not taking a tight end in the first. You're not taking a running back in the first. If you took a defensive player in the first round this year, there may be riots in the street, but that would depend on who the defensive player is. For example, if Jermaine Johnson was selected at 26, I would say, okay, how's he going to get on the field? But that's a great player. Figure out how to make it work, right? I'm not going to lose my mind if Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher out of Florida State, is who the Titans select, because that's a fantastic player. That's the definition of best player available. So as we go through this situation, and as we try and project how this is going to pan out, what John has been steadfast on is that they are open to all possible scenarios. He talked about trading out of the first round and how that might be difficult without a second round pick because of the way that these things get packaged. He and Mike Vrabel have talked about what exactly it is that they look for. Now, the whole how much these guys love football thing, they've kind of been hit over the head with that the last couple of years in ways that may be fair, may be unfair. But as far as the Titans' strategy is concerned, they've got 25 picks ahead of them right now to kind of figure out how this all goes. This is the frustration about the draft process to me, right? You do all of this study, all of this legwork leading up to it, and I'm doing a quarter of what an NFL organization is doing, right? Because I'm one person. They've got entire staffs dedicated to this. If I get through 100 players in my pre-draft preparation, which about between I think I got about 90 to 100 players in this year with just some kind of notation, just some kind of note. It doesn't have to be super thorough detail. It's certainly not Dane Brugler's draft beast that he puts out every year where there's over 1,000 prospects. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, just so I have a ground level, a foundational level heading into this process, I'm going to try and get to as many players as humanly possible. And if I make it to triple digits, then I feel great. And that's still, a quarter of the guys who will end up being on NFL rosters by the time this process is done, both drafted and undrafted. It's something for them that I think there are going to be a lot of different scenarios that we see play out, or at least that's what the conversation seems to be, right? It's a lot murkier this year, certainly than last year. Now, 2020's draft, I don't know what kind of scale you grade that on with the all virtual draft that we all did, and everybody drafting from their individual homes. You've got Frozone and somebody dressed up as Mike Vrabel in his Pro Bowl jersey in the background of the Vrabel family basement, and all of the, you've got John set up with his draft war room in his office. These kind of things outside of the 2020 draft, which was just a shooting star across a pandemic-stricken sky. I don't know how much more murky it's been this year than in years past, but I know it becomes complicated when you pick in the late teens to 20s, the way that the Tennessee Titans usually do, because you do all this legwork and then all of a sudden it's washed out. So disaster scenarios, 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Is there a worst-case scenario for you as a Titans fan as you get ready to watch your team potentially add a first-round draft pick tonight? 615-737-1045. We'll take your phone calls on this throughout the course of the day. We can do best-case scenario as well. Worst-case scenario seems to be the place that most people want to lead, because you guys say that you don't want chaos and anarchy, but I think there's a percentage of you that just kind of want to watch stuff burn. So we can talk about that, and as well as a pretty critical update for a team that's getting ready to hit the postseason. But we'll do that after Lucas has something. What do you have?
One local member, I don't want to say media member, but one local person in the community did project an inside linebacker to the Titans. It's T-Rack. T-Rack made Jim Wyatt's latest mock draft roundup. He is one of 100 names.
Jimmy texted 100 people for this
100 people.
thing?
100 people.
And one of them is the mascot.
Yes, and he projected Nakobe Dean.
I love Jim Wyatt to death. I don't know how. I don't know why he does this to himself. I don't know how he does this to himself. But yes, if you want Jimmy Wyatt's 100 man and woman local media mock draft that apparently also includes the selection of T-Rack, the infamous raccoon who hangs out around the Titans stadium.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Raccoon.
Raccoon.
Got a break. Praise is pouring in. Welcome back on this draft day. We're happy to have you guys as a part of the show. People are, my pronunciation of raccoon is coming under heavy criticism.
I've never heard that. that is inexcusable.
Tim at Horn Beef has tweeted us. Didn't know, wasn't following you. I am now. Was reading my 5-year-old stories before bed, and last night was about a raccoon. And I just laughed out loud because I guess we pronounce it the same way. So, people who pronounce it that way, unite.
No. Absolutely not.
The rest of the YouTube chat is just dragging me. The Zone TV chat, Facebook Live, Twitter,
that
YouTube,
is a phonetic offense.
and Twitch.
I'm offended by that.
John Eccles says, come on, Buck, terrible. The raccoon is our state animal. Must be the Evansville, Indiana accent. Is there an Indiana accent? I don't think.
Not that I know of.
It's just, I sound like me. I've sounded like I'm 45 for 29 years.
His name is T-Rack, not T-Ruck.
I have no regrets. So you guys are sending, and if you want questions answered, of course, I see a couple filtering in on Zone TV. Phone lines are open, of course, as well. 615-737-1045. Jesse Johnson is asking about offensive linemen, and we will get to that momentarily. But there is I think this is the only non-draft segment that we have today, and then we will continue the exhaustive draft coverage throughout the rest of this morning and into this afternoon before Titans radio coverage takes over at 6 p.m. Central Time. Nashville Predators. So, of course, dramatic loss at home against the Calgary Flames the other night. Give up a goal in overtime with 1/10 of a second left. David Riddick, the backup goaltender, in goal because UC Saros suffered a left leg non-contact injury and had to be removed from the game, not to return. So, Preds lose that game in dramatic fashion, but they end up clinching the playoffs anyway by virtue of a Las Vegas Golden Knights loss later in the evening. And now, with 2 games remaining, the certainty of UC Saros being back in goal is very much up in the air. We have an update from John Hines this morning, Lucas.
John Hines this morning with Joe Rexrode said that they are hopeful, and that was basically the update, that UC Saros needs to get some rest. They're hopeful about his status for the playoffs, but nothing as far as an injury designation, which is not uncommon in the NHL. It'll probably come out as a lower body injury, but he was not shut down. So I suppose that is encouraging news. Not so encouraging that you do have to recall Connor Ingram from Milwaukee, and he and David Riddick will have to start the last 2 games of the regular season.
So that would signify, at least in the immediate, do they have any kind of time off? Forgive me, I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of the wild card situation in the NHL. Will they have any time whatsoever before their playoff series begins?
Not really. It's a fairly quick turnaround from what I can remember historically in the NHL playoffs. There's not like a 2-week break or anything, or even a 1-week break.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen pretty quickly. Ironically, the Dallas Stars clinched last night in almost the exact same fashion that the Preds did the other day, only needing 1 point to clinch, and they blew a lead, lost in overtime to Arizona, one of the worst teams in the league, who the Preds will play 2 games from now.
And that works to Nashville's advantage, correct? Because of the situation with trying to determine whether their first-round opponent will be the Colorado Avalanche or the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, so 1 point back of Dallas now. Preds are in the second wild card spot. They do have a game in hand, so Dallas just has 1 regular season games remaining. Preds will have 2. So they'll have an opportunity to jump Dallas tonight at the Colorado Avalanche, a potential first-round opponent. That's the opponent you want to avoid, and then you got to get 2 points against the Arizona Coyotes. Again, one of the worst teams in hockey this year. That's the regular season finale on the road. So if you can squeeze out a point in Colorado, you feel pretty good about your chances to get that first wild card spot, and then everything else hinges on whether or not you're able to beat Arizona and whether or not you're going to get back UC Saros for the postseason.
The hockey injuries drive me crazy. Like, hockey has, or Mike Vrabel's got nothing on hockey as far as lower body, upper body injury, that kind of stuff.
Extremities.
It's useless. That's all useless to me. But I am very, very curious to see how this pans out because, I want to know whether they've got a shot to compete in the postseason. And, no disrespect. Well, I guess I can't say no disrespect because it is inherently disrespectful to David Riddick to say that if he is the starter in goal, if he makes his first postseason start for the Nashville Predators because of UC Saros' absence, I can't imagine a situation in which they are not dead on arrival.
No UC Saros means no playoff hopes for the Preds. I think it's that simple. I really do.
Okay. Well, there will be much more time to discuss that, and that will conclude our non-football coverage for the remainder of the day. Now, there was a report this morning that came out that made Lucas furious, absolutely filled him with rage. It was laugh out loud funny to watch. It came from Adam Schefter, and it has to do with this first round of the NFL draft. It's going to be a pretty interesting scenario that we watched play out tonight because we discussed wild cards yesterday, right? In fact, Lucas, if you could get me the audio from Ian Rappaport about the biggest wild card in the first round of the NFL draft. We did play it yesterday, but I do think it's worth reiterating because of the situation that is ahead of us. There are two or three teams that I think could completely muck up the draft for everybody else in ways that we have not been able to imagine in the last 3 months. This was Ian Rappaport on NFL Network yesterday, live from Las Vegas, talking about one of those three teams.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a trade is really viable at 3. I know a lot of the teams right up there where the Texans are would like to trade back. Just doesn't seem like it's going to happen based on this year's various scenarios. So it seems like the Texans are going to pick, and they are the most curious team, let's say, in the top 5. And I hear from teams all over the map saying the same thing. Oh, it's the Texans. It's Nick Caserio. Who knows what they're going to do? But here's a couple things they're looking at. The possibility of taking a tackle. Maybe this is Ike Ekwonu from NC State, perhaps Evan Neal. That is one that exists. There is a possibility they take a corner. And there's 2 top corners in this draft, and then everyone else. So Sauce Gardner, who it seems we've been talking a ton about. And then there's Derek Stingley from LSU. And this is actually one to watch. And it does not seem like, considering his talents, it doesn't seem like 3 is too early. He would fit perfectly into Lovie Smith's scheme. This is one to watch as well. Texans could do literally anything. I know so many are just watching and trying to figure out what it's going to be, but they got some really intriguing options here at 3.
So that's where the run starts, right? What do you like?
I love the Texans could do literally anything because they have positions of need literally everywhere.
Well, yeah, they're stinky.
I love that. The biggest wild cards are almost always the worst teams in the league, right? Because they need everything.
Turns out they literally could use a player at every position because their football team sucks. Terrible. And, they did give the Tennessee Titans a scare in Week 18 of the regular season, so you can't laugh too hard.
Beat them once.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That feels so long ago, that loss to the Houston Texans.
What a miserable day that was. Just the rain and all the injuries, all of it.
Yeah, last season, while there were a lot of fun parts of it, there was a great deal of it that was just smothered in misery because of injuries and things of that nature. So literally anything is what the Texans could do with the 3rd overall selection. And that is going to play into the Adam Schefter report that we will tell you about coming up next.
It is 10:59. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica, and welcome to Draft Day. Coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft from Las Vegas starts with Titans Radio at 6 p.m. with the draft officially getting underway at 7. But stay tuned to 104.5 The Zone for coverage throughout the day, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans in the lead up to the first name being called by Commissioner Roger Goodell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans, of course, pick at 26. Titans picked up the fifth-year option for defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons on Wednesday, locking him in for $10.7 million in 2023. Simmons coming off his first career Pro Bowl after a career-high 8.5 sacks last season. And around the league, the Arizona Cardinals picked up the fifth-year option for quarterback Kyler Murray on Wednesday. The Nashville Predators recalled goaltender Connor Ingram from the Milwaukee Admirals Wednesday, as they will be without UC Saros for the final 2 regular season games of the year after Saros suffered a non-contact leg injury in the overtime loss to Calgary on Tuesday. The Preds have a spot clinched and will take on a potential first-round opponent tonight at the Colorado Avalanche, an 8 p.m. puck drop. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Moving along in a hurry. Welcome in, welcome back. If you've been with us so far this morning, happy to have you guys as a part of the show. Lucas Panzica is back there making it happen. Your phone calls, your questions, your comments, your concerns are welcome. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on our radio show today. 615-737-1045. So, there are reports coming out all over the place, some of varying degrees of usefulness, some not, as is the case for most of the draft process. But there was one, should we call it I don't even know if you want to call it a report, Lucas. Should we call this thing that made you just foaming at the mouth with rage when I talked to you this morning?
I mean, I guess it's a report, right? Adam Schefter is sharing something he heard from a source.
All right. So Adam Schefter, 2 hours ago, one veteran front office executive this morning, quote, "This is the craziest draft I've seen in 30 years," end quote. And I'm trying to figure out what to make of that. Now, Lucas sent this to me this morning just with a bunch of question marks. I assume that was the starting point of your rage. And I immediately responded, I don't know about 30 years. I haven't been alive for 30 years. But I mean, in recent memory, like the craziest draft of my lifetime was the COVID draft, the virtual draft, just by nature of how many different things that we were all dealing with and how the whole process kind of got flung into a tailspin with no clear and obvious path forward other than, okay, we're going to figure it out.
Okay, so you don't agree with the tweet?
Well, no, because my selection would be the COVID draft.
But you said you did agree.
I agree, non-COVID draft category. And crazy can be done by degrees, but I think that as far as I'm concerned, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty about this upcoming draft. I don't know if Malik Willis is going to go 6. I don't know if he's going to go 32. You know what I'm saying? The most important position, the most scrutinized position in this draft, we have no earthly idea which is going to be the first quarterback off the board, where he's going to go to, or how many of them will end up going in that first round. I got no idea. None whatsoever. So from that standpoint, it creates, because, domino effect. The quarterbacks are the thing that most people kind of predicate their plans off of. Either you need one or you don't. And if you don't, then you figure it out around the people who do. That's the whole Coach Mack premise of quarterback draft and then the actual draft. So if the domino of the quarterbacks fall, but you have no idea where they're going to fall, then it throws everything else into a bit of chaos. Where you've got, with the third overall, you've got the number 1 overall pick. Jacksonville doesn't know what the hell it's doing. Apparently, as recently as like 3 days ago. You've got what we played that audio earlier today, of the idea that the Houston Texans could literally select any position on the board because they have so many needs across the board and their football team stinks. You go on to likely the first quarterback selection at 6 with the Carolina Panthers, but is there a quarterback who's worth the 6th overall pick this year? I don't know, because none of these guys are going to play right away. Kenny Pickett is the one who is most capable of it, according to NFL scouts, but Kenny Pickett is the one with the lowest possible ceiling out of any of these guys who we're discussing as a first-round prospect. So when Schefter reports or says, according to a front office exec this morning, this is the craziest draft I've seen in 30 years, why did this make you so angry?
I mean, what's crazy about it? I know everything you just said, but to me,
everything I literally just said.
That's not enough, though. An underwhelming quarterback class, not knowing how an underwhelming quarterback class is going to fall, to me, does not qualify as this is the craziest draft in the last 3 decades. Like, is it the fact that there's hardly any quote unquote can't miss talents at the top of the board? Is it that we've hardly seen any movement as far as trading picks in the first couple rounds because teams don't think it's worth it to move up, or to, teams trying to move back can't because teams don't think it's worth it in this draft to move up? I mean, A, it's a stupid thing to say, I think, before the draft even begins. And B, nothing about this draft is interesting or crazy enough to even hold a candle to even last year's draft or 2020, like you said. But we hear this every year. I mean, I just think it's dumb. I mean, can we go back to last year when Adam Schefter drops a bomb on draft day that Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay and everybody's left scurrying about what the Packers are going to do and trade rumors? Or when we had 3 quarterbacks taken with the first 3 picks for only the 3rd time in NFL history? I just think it's a stupid thing to say before the draft even starts, and it doesn't even hold a candle to even last season. And we're talking about the last 30 years. So I would like to retract my dumbest thing in sports this week. If Jerry West could please just step aside, front office exec saying
if his case to take to the Supreme Court the fact that he does not like his portrayal in an HBO mockumentary series, yes, if that could take a backseat for just the moment so Lucas could nominate what is the dumbest thing in sports.
Front office executive saying this is the craziest draft in 30 years. Literally every year. Every year we hear this, and this draft is not interesting enough to qualify as the craziest draft in even the last 2 years.
Say that to me, quickly.
Say that to me. Say that to anybody. Say it to somebody.
Like last season, last year.
Last year was nuts. Last year was nuts.
Was nuts. And we're going to talk about this being the craziest draft in the last 30 years. Literally last year's was more interesting than this one.
Well, I think, here's the thing. He's citing one front office executive, right? Like that's one person. So maybe the one person, let's say, for example, it's Jacksonville. Let's just use Jacksonville because their season has been insane. From everything from Urban Meyer to, Trent Baalke reportedly being in the headset. No, that was the Houston Texans. Never mind. But Trent Baalke having this kind of like power struggle internally to the point where they were looking at hiring somebody to work under Trent Baalke, but in the same kind of capacity that fits Trent Baalke's job description. So you've got all of these different things. You again have the number 1 overall pick because you're terrible at this. You're just wretched at it. And all of the stuff that has materialized from the Jacksonville Jaguars as a professional sports franchise. And again, you are in conflict like Tuesday about which player you're going to take with the number 1 overall pick. And you're looking around and being like, man, this is nuts.
Been on the clock for how many months?
Last year was easy. Oh, quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, done. Done and dusted. Move on, right? So it depends which organization he's citing there. It doesn't mean that it's wide. This is not a commonly held belief, one would imagine. But based on whichever front office executive Adam Schefter is talking. Now, Schefter knows what he's doing when he puts that out there from one front office executive who says this is insane because, of course, that's going to get traction. We're going to talk about it. People are going to talk about it. People are going to start to wonder, who has said this? Who has put this out into the world? What could this possibly mean for the New York or for the Atlanta Falcons sitting there at number 8? I don't know. It's just nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. That's why we had a celebration. That's why we had a celebration with a round of applause to start the show because it's over. It's done. Until next year.
It's not over until Roger Goodell steps onto that podium to a crowd full of booze. Like, what are we doing literally right now?
I swear. What are we doing right now?
Yeah, all the things that we're
What do you
talking
mean?
about that we hate.
I just sent you scurrying across the internet looking for percentages of positions that were drafted
Exactly.
by somebody from the San Diego Tribune.
And we're saying that it's over. It's finally over. No, it's over when Roger Goodell steps up to that stage. And tomorrow when
For
we have
us,
a
it's
draft
over
pick.
today. It ends today, damn it. You will not tell me otherwise. I will not read another mock draft. I will not read another, news and notes, insider edition rumors around the NFL draft, even though I did this morning. I'll be honest with you, I did do that before I walked in to do the radio show today. But, the controversy, if you want to call it controversy, right? The controversy is predicated around the most important position. And the most important position will always, regardless of whether it's a down bad class or not, will always revolve around the quarterbacks. Now, we've gotten a lot of insight and analysis on the quarterback position that we are going to share with you, something that I think is going to matter very much. We've told you one of these wildcard teams. The Houston Texans are one of the 3 wildcard teams that I think could completely throw the draft order out of whack in some form or fashion, as is the case oftentimes in many other drafts. But we're going to play you a piece of audio coming up next to that effect that I think is going to be the second wild card team that may throw you for a loop. Now, if you're looking for plans on this draft evening, one, there's a number of different things that you can do. Titans Radio is going to be broadcasting from 6 p.m. through the first round tonight, and from 6 p.m. through the third round, the second and the third round on Friday night. You can hear that right here on 104.5 The Zone. It's all presented by our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. But if you want somewhere to go communally to watch the NFL draft together and to enjoy it with other Titans fans, you couldn't get out to Las Vegas maybe, but you want to find some place to go, 3HL today is going to be in Murfreesboro at a brand new Buffalo Wild Wings ahead of the first round of tonight's the 2022 NFL Draft. You can hang out from 3 to 6 p.m. for chances to win Titans tickets, autographed items, including a signed Jeffrey Simmons jersey, and many more things. Plus, you may enjoy drink specials, including pints of Miller for $2.75. So join us this evening in Murfreesboro. Well, not join us. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be at the facility. But 3HL will be there. Thursday in Murfreesboro ahead of the 2022 NFL Draft at Buffalo Wild Wings, Wings Sports Beer.
Wings Beer Sports.
Oh, is that what you were waiting for?
Yeah, I thought you were going to
That's not my fault. I'm literally Wings Sports Beer. It's right in front of me. I got an email. Read this morning. So I read this morning, and you know what I read? I read Wings Sports Beer. Who do you want me to yell at? No, you don't get to give me the wrap it up finger without any silence back there when I looked at you like go to commercial. I don't know. What do you mean?
I'm sorry. I thought you were looking at me like you were confused.
I'm looking at you like go to break because I know that's not right. Wings Beer Sports, go to break.
Little Flo Rida. This was not a very selective music choice by me, but I had to put something in there. I was scrambling for audio. It's a big day. So it's the opposite of that. The least heavy lifting, because we don't have any guests, it's the opposite. We talked about this on the phone this morning. Not complaining, I'm just saying. I can't always, sometimes just got to throw a song in. Don't hate on Flo Rida, all right? He defined middle school for me. That wasn't your peak? You didn't peak in middle school?
Oh, people are yelling at you because thank goodness that they couldn't hear the thing in the YouTube in the Zone TV
Cannot
chat.
hear Flo Rida in the YouTube.
Well, my
YouTube
mic
chat.
is off, so they can't hear me either. So
No,
apparently
your mic's
there's
on.
not nearly enough heavy lifting that you're doing for the people on Zone TV. Just unbelievable. All right. So what is going to make this even a bigger wild card than we have discussed? So we've talked about the Houston Texans sitting there at 3. Now, Adam Schefter has just reported that the Houston pick at number 3 is being explored for a trade back up for a second top 10 pick per league sources. So they're shopping 3 to try and stay in the top 10, but just move back a pick or 2 for anybody who wants to come up. If the right player is there, the Texans are trying to position themselves to get there, to move their second first-round pick at number 13 to go get them. So there's a lot of this. That you look at and say, all right, a lot of stuff up in the air. But as you move further down the first round, so we've gone to 3, Houston Texans, literally any position on the board. It seems like they're going to rock with Davis Mills, but who knows? Then there's the Carolina Panthers sitting at number 6. Now, their general manager, Scott Fitterer, I believe is his name. He's recently on the job, or within the last year or so, been the Panthers general manager. Scott Fitterer has given voice to the idea that they expect to come out of this draft with a starting quarterback. They are also, as been reported by people like Ian Rappaport, waiting to see how the first round plays out before they think about giving up draft capital to go get somebody who may be the best quarterback available, draft or not this year, in Baker Mayfield. Not a lot of sex appeal there, but such is life. So we had Charles Davis, who is going to be on the desk for NFL Network all 3 days of their draft coverage. And Charles had the Carolina Panthers selecting, with the 6th overall pick, the quarterback out of Liberty, Malik Willis. Here was his explanation why.
Best fit for Carolina, and the reason I find it plausible there is these reasons. One, they've struggled at that position. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right?
Right.
Since Cam Newton was at his peak, that's been a struggle. Kyle Allen for a short time, he was the guy, nothing is stuck, okay? They went out and spent big money and got Sam Darnold in. That didn't work very well. Then you start to have an owner in David Tepper who has not been exactly quiet about the idea of remember about the Deshaun Watson thing? I want a franchise quarterback. And then I go back to Scott Fitterer. I think, Buck, last time we saw each other was Combine, right?
Yes.
So you remember, wasn't it around that time, help me out here, sir, that Scott Fitterer, the GM of Carolina, did say something to the effect of, sometimes if you're picking in the top 10, you have to take your shot.
Yeah.
And you might have to take a shot at a quarterback. So I threw that all into the hopper, and I spit it out. And the last thing is, Kenny Pickett, I think, is probably the number 1 quarterback in this class. I like how he operates. I love what he does. I give him big credit for elevating his game. A lot of people, Buck, want to damn him with it. And I said, hold a second. Didn't Joe Burrow really elevate his game? Didn't Zach Wilson really elevate his game? Why are we holding this against Kenny Pickett? That doesn't make sense to me. But do I think Kenny Pickett has the same ceiling? Right, here we go into buzzword words, right? I got to get a buzzword in.
Oh, sure.
Does he have the same ceiling as Joe Burrow, as Zach Wilson, as – I don't think so. I think what I'm seeing is good, and I don't know I'm going to get any more magic out of it. Sam Darnold, in a lot of ways, is Kenny Pickett. In a lot of ways. Now, Pickett can outplay him. We know that. But a lot of times you go opposite what you kind of currently have. Willis would definitely be opposite. And the last part is, Matt Rule came out of college, Buck. What drives those guys crazy? Those types of mobile quarterbacks, quarterback run game, all that other stuff. And coaches like Matt Rule remember that. And I'm sure he might be lobbying in that direction if indeed they pick a quarterback. And as you mentioned, I have one more left. And I will give you a little bit of a spoiler. I don't know exactly where I'm going yet, but I'm probably less inclined to go quarterback there than I was in the past.
So that's Charles Davis, both of NFL Media and the NFL on CBS, giving his analysis of why he believes that Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback, makes the most sense to the Carolina Panthers. It seems likely that he will be the first one off the board. I was reading this morning from Dan Graziano and I'm blanking on the Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, who put together the NFL draft, rumors of potential picks, trades, and moves. They do a column several times around the Senior Bowl, around the Combine, and certainly pre-draft. So it is being widely reported that Malik Willis is likely to be the first quarterback drafted at this point, with Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh as the next highest rated QB. Now, at what point that those guys come off the board is in question, but that seems to be teams looking around at this. Because remember that Malik Willis came to Nashville for a top 30 visit with the Tennessee Titans. So it's not like they're not doing their due diligence on the position as well. But as far as that is concerned, people seem to be leaning more towards the potential of Willis than they do the proven commodity that is Kenny Pickett. But remember, so we'll play the audio from Jason Fitz later on in the show about why it's ridiculous for the Titans to take a quarterback at 26. Fitzy had a bit of it was grandstanding. He was on his soapbox yesterday about the idea that the Titans would replace Ryan Tannehill because they're pissed at him for Cincinnati or whatever, which seems silly, but we'll get to that analysis later on. But something that has come up with a fair amount of frequency is the idea that potential is the thing that people are trafficking in more. Now, think about Kenny Pickett coming into, and Lucas can probably speak on this better than most, given the way that Kenny Pickett did elevate his game substantially in 2021. Kenny Pickett was not this for the majority of his Pittsburgh Panthers career. He was not regarded as a top draft prospect. In fact, I forget the name of the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh.
Mark Whipple.
So Mark Whipple working with Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett elevating himself in college, not to the Joe Burrow heights, right? That's the best college season. That's the best college offense that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Probably the biggest jump from one season to another by any quarterback in college football history.
Burrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though Pickett never had more than 13 touchdown passes in one season before last year.
Came out of nowhere, it felt like. And then all of a sudden, Pittsburgh is they were the ACC champs this year. They beat Wake Forest in the ACC championship game. They did it with offense. And Wake Forest has been renowned for, or at least in the last season, had a really, really strong defense. Kenny Pickett did that. That's a credit to him. So the question becomes, okay, how much have you seen from Kenny Pickett and how much better can it get? Most people around the NFL, and it's not like hand size is the end all be all for this, but for a variety of different reasons, people believe that Kenny Pickett has a smaller ceiling, a lower ceiling than somebody like Malik Willis, who you've seen precious little from as far as what he's going to be asked to do at the NFL level. Hugh Freeze was just being interviewed on NFL Network as I'm sitting in here doing the show today. And Hugh Freeze, I don't know if he was asked the question about, hey, do you think that as you're developing, because Hugh Freeze has been coaching offense for a long time, but they do their draft prospects no favors, especially at the quarterback position, because they run a grade school offense. They run a very, very base level offense. There are not a lot of NFL concepts in there. He is not Kenny Pickett or rather Malik Willis or any quarterback who plays in the Liberty system or a couple of years ago at Ole Miss. They're not asked to go through progressions. They're not asked to make full field reads when they're going through their progressions, things of that nature. It's very, very simplified in a way that when you watch the film for evaluation purposes, you're sitting there thinking, all right, what can he learn how to do? He seems to have been received very well from all of his draft interviews that he did. This was something that was talked about. I had one person tell me that they did not have a good interview from Malik Willis, but the vast majority of the conversations being had from scouts across the league and from personnel people across the league is that Malik Willis, they feel confident in his ability to learn, to be able to grow in an NFL system with the proper coaching. Coaching matters so much for this. Carolina, I don't know if you try. Is Matt Rule a good NFL coach? I don't have the answer to that. And I don't know how much of that is because Christian McCaffrey doesn't play. Lucas, you said he'd played, 30% of the games that he's been able to play since he signed his new contract? This was a couple of weeks ago, months ago.
Yeah, we talked about it. It's a small number.
So Christian McCaffrey, I don't know how much of that is predicated on the fact that they've had bad quarterbacks and their star offensive player not be able to participate in a great deal of these games. John Eccles on YouTube points out, Kenny Pickett became buddies with Peyton Manning at the Manning Passing Academy. Pickett had a good year. Fifth-year option is a big deal for a first-rounder. And then Meridian Hammer on Twitch asks, can you please explain why Malik Willis is quarterback one? I just don't see it. He couldn't beat out Bo Nix and wasn't great at Liberty, which, by the way, fair criticism. Now, the Liberty stuff, we'll grade on that. We'll grade on that scale, right? Now, as you kind of look at the things that attract people to Malik Willis in this quarterback class, I don't want to give you analysis that is not my own. So I'm basically going to give you the insights that Dane Brugler has provided in his Beast Draft Guide. This is the outline, and it should be noted that QB1, according to Dane Brugler, as far as NFL readiness is concerned, is not Malik Willis. It's Kenny Pickett. So here, what he writes of Willis is this. As a 3-star athlete, recruit out of high school, number 21 athlete in the 2017 class, number 35 recruit in Georgia. So this was not a highly touted recruit. As far as a high school player is concerned, they didn't have a position for him, basically. The number 21 athlete in the 2017 class. Got his first offer from Jackson State, followed by Virginia Tech. So one FCS before he got his first FBS offer, and he was basically an athlete until the summer of his senior year. Now, where his strengths lie is he's very comfortable maneuvering in the pocket. He's very natural. He seems to do well extending plays. He's very dynamic as a player, which, if you listen to any of Mike Vrabel's combine podium availability, Mike talked a couple of different times throughout the course of the scouting combine. But when Mike Vrabel is on the podium, he was asked about what they look for in quarterbacks and how much mobility has to account for that part of it. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel on that shortly. But because of the dynamic speed and movement skills that Dane points out, he's got an incredible ability to extend the play. And, frankly, he's got an absolute rocket of an arm. Now, the things that are in question, he doesn't get quite the accuracy, holes poked in him the way that, for example, Desmond Ridder does. I think a lot of the Desmond Ridder stuff, by the way, is a little overblown. I don't think that is something that is not correctable with proper NFL coaching. Where Desmond Ridder lands and whether he receives that proper coaching is an entirely different scenario. But what Mike Vrabel said about the quarterbacks at the combine was how much they had to account for mobility in this NFL, in the way that you're having interior defensive linemen that are as athletic as they've ever been. And you have to be able to, and here in Tennessee, how much is Ryan Tannehill's ability to move a part of the offense, particularly in the red zone, particularly as far as scoring is concerned? He's had 7 rushing touchdowns in back-to-back years. 14 total rushing touchdowns in the last 2 seasons for Ryan Tannehill, which was a career high for him. Tied for a career high this last season as well. So even as his passing touchdown output was not what you wanted it to be, you still had a threat in the red zone with the quarterback's abilities to make plays with his legs. Now, Mike Vrabel, the audio we don't have handy, but we do have John Robinson talking specifically about this quarterback class.
Yeah, I think it's according to what quarterback class you're comparing it to. I think if you compare it to certain ones, it certainly is not as strong. But there's other classes where I'd say it's at least comparable and maybe even a tinge better. It's been good to spend a little bit of time with some of those guys, get to know those guys. That's a hard position. Quarterback position is a hard position to play in the National Football League. There's a lot that goes into that position. I think all the guys that are in this draft that we've talked to, certainly seem capable and willing to learn and put the time in to make that transition.
You had that conversation with the quarterbacks. I would imagine that's different. How is that conversation different for you guys when you're talking to them?
Yeah, I think you're trying to identify leadership. How's that guy going to lead a football team? What's his level of competence? He's certainly probably going to be more well-versed in his specific offense, terminology-wise. You can't expect them to just be able to spit back like whatever we call a certain play or certain defense, but can they associate the concept that we're trying to talk about? But it's really the leadership and the willingness to learn, the coachability, and how are they going to step into a situation and with guys much older than them that they might line up with and be able to lead those guys and push those guys to score points.
Which, by the way, that last part, the ability to line up with and get guys set in an offense, guys who are much older, guys who have families, guys who are full-grown adults in the NFL. Consider how big a portion of that factors into this. You have to have command as a young player, especially coming into the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield has been under heavy criticism as far as that is concerned. People didn't necessarily respect the kind of authority that Baker was trying to project. You've seen several reports out of Cleveland. Now, maybe that's people just trying to drag Baker on the way out the door, and that wasn't a big part of the conversation in the last, 4 years. That Baker Mayfield's been a starting quarterback until such time as, clearly things were starting to fracture there. But that's something to keep in mind. And what John Robinson said there is a part of Malik Willis's weaknesses. He does not have the field vision yet, because he has not been asked to develop it under Hugh Freeze. He does not have the decision-making that will be necessary yet. Those are still things that are in the developmental phase when you go through and watch him. But he's still a dynamic athlete with the ability to learn and the ability to be coachable in ways that when you came away from combine meetings and top 30 visits and things of that nature, people seem to be very comfortable with the idea that he can pick up on NFL caliber concepts in, a normal rookie offseason, right? Which is what we're projecting and what we seem to have right now. Nothing impacted by COVID-19 as we sit here today. Knock on wood or whatever surface that you've got in front of you that you feel comfortable knocking on. He set several passing and rushing records at Liberty. He's the single season record for total touchdowns, 40, and the single game record for total touchdowns, 7. And he did all of this with an FCS caliber group around him. This is not high-level football players that are around Malik Willis at Liberty. And
in a pretty basic scheme.
Right, which is the point that I was just getting ready to make. So it's potential that makes Malik Willis quarterback one to some people. But if you are asking, and this was something that Charles Davis laid out earlier when we played that clip for you, if you're asking if he is outright quarterback one, that's not the case. Kenny Pickett is outright quarterback one because you can drop Kenny Pickett coming from a pro-style offense into the most possible scenarios that NFL teams will have that have an immediate need at the quarterback position or, who may slow play him a little bit, whomever it is, until they can take over the starting quarterback job. Kenny Pickett gives you the best opportunity to do that with the least amount of time to get him ready, right? The rest of them, Ritter, Willis, you get beyond that. It's really, you have, I'm blanking on the North Carolina quarterback name.
Howell.
Sam Howell. you have all of these different guys who you talk about. They are further behind from where Kenny Pickett has already displayed on film against ACC and SEC opponents the ability to operate at a high level within an NFL type of system. That's how they determine quarterback one. Doesn't mean that Kenny Pickett will have the best career. Kenny Pickett, as we talked about, lowest ceiling of any of those top tier, quote unquote, quarterbacks who will be available for teams to draft. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. Zach Bunch on YouTube says Sam Howell is cheeks. Also did not have a good offensive line in front of him, and the coaching of Mac Brown is something that has been called into question a couple of times on this. Now, for Tennessee, quarterback is a part of the equation. Now, we'll get to the quarterback situation here in Tennessee later on in the show, but as we sit here today, that's not the most important piece of the draft puzzle for the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to give you Greg Cosell's analysis on the most important piece for the Tennessee Titans moving forward, coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Welcome back. So, the needs for the Tennessee Titans. We have not, we're at what, 2 hours and 46 minutes into no, an hour 46 minutes into the show. Bad math. My bad. Relax, Lucas. I got it.
We were trying to do 30 minus 12 an hour ago.
It was tough. It's really tough stuff. Anyway, we are an hour and 46 minutes into this fine radio program today. And we have not really talked about the Tennessee Titans at 26. A little bit. We've talked about John Robinson. We've talked about the pressure that's on him tonight specifically, how he handles this first round. But we've not talked about the players that I think make the most sense. Now, the most clear and obvious need for the Tennessee Titans, I think indisputably this year, is the offensive line. I don't think there's any way around it. I think if you draft an offensive lineman, hell, I think they should draft two if humanly possible this year because the viability, I don't know how much longer Nate Davis is going to be around. I don't know how much longer Ben Jones is going to be around. I don't know how much longer Taylor Lewan is going to be around. And you've got two spots already up for grabs. So, two offensive linemen this year. As you chase this offensive line rebuild, that's the most important need for them, hands down. Immediate need. And immediacy is, I think, all anybody cares about right now, right? Microwave the results. So, how do you go about figuring out how to find the best offensive lineman? Because I've maintained for a long time, even as I'm somebody who gets paid to watch and to watch football, to cover football, to study football, there are a lot of the intricacies of positions, technique, what goes into it, how it is evaluated. There's a lot of stuff there that even those of you who have watched football for 30 and 40 and 50, 60 years, you may not necessarily understand, right? That, I think, is never more true than when it comes to the offensive lineman, to trying to figure out, all right, who is the best player at this position and why? I think they get judged unfairly by the performance of the positions that are very much dependent on them. The quarterbacks, the running backs, and, I mean, hell, even the wide receivers, their ability to get downfield, the ability to hold up in pass protection, it all starts up front. So how do you go about scouting an offensive lineman? That's been a big question that I've had years of doing the draft evaluation, and I've been fortunate to learn a lot more about how these things are studied and dissected and what approaches coaches and scouts use. And to have Greg Cosell help me through this process this year has been a tremendous asset. So we did an episode of the install last night, and it's really worth your time to go check out. It's going to be evergreen because the position that we did it on was almost exclusively offensive line because I know they're going to draft one, if not two. So when I asked, relax, Lucas. I know it's a long windup, but I'm getting there. When I asked Greg yesterday on the podcast about how he goes about scouting the offensive line, I think it's worth listening to because it'll help you understand exactly what these scouts are looking for and which prospects may or may not have the ability to have this translate.
And I had to learn, Buck. I'll be the first one to admit it. You know, I didn't start out as an offensive line guy, and sometimes I still feel that I'm not great at it, but I've gotten a chance to learn quite a bit over the years. So I would say when you look at offensive linemen on tape, there's two elements, obviously. There's run blocking and there's pass protection. And there's different traits and attributes that are needed for those two different areas of offensive line play. I think when you look at it at the run blocking portion, they have to be able to move the line of scrimmage. That's power, okay? They have to be able to cut off, backside cutoff blocks, those kinds of blocks. They've got to be able to make what we call front side reach blocks. Those are hard blocks. In a general sense, they have to be able to do what we call unlock their hips, because you move D linemen with your lower body, but you control them with your upper body in your hands.
Right.
So those are the two parts of really moving defensive linemen. And then you have to be able to redirect, because defensive linemen are going to try to move. They're not just going to stand there and say, here I am, block me. So when they move, you have to be able to redirect the force of your block and your body to continue to control them.
Yeah.
So then if you go to pass protection, again, that's different. Different and the same. Centers and guards, they control the depth of the pocket. Okay, make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Tackles control the width of the pocket. So centers and guards can't be pushed back because then the quarterback doesn't have any room. So they have to be able to the terms we would use would be they have to be able to sink and anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Tackles, they have a more difficult task because they have to deal with speed to power, rushers. They have to be able to deal with what we call high side speed, meaning on the edge, on the outside. And then they have to be able to deal with what we call low side quickness, where guys come inside and attack their inside. So those are the kinds of things you look for.
And that is the way that teams will go about scouting the offensive lineman in two parts: run blocking, pass blocking, and the dynamics of which are super scrutinized. Now, things like Mobile, the Senior Bowl, right, where you're having a couple of the interior offensive linemen, guys like Zion Johnson, Dylan Parham at Memphis, Cole Strange at UT Chat, played guard throughout the course of their career. Zion Johnson is also somebody who has played tackle at Boston College. In fact, while Tyler Vrabel was not starting at left tackle, Zion Johnson was the starting left tackle at BC. So this is why teams will look at, okay, lower body flexibility. You're talking about the difference between power and strength, because those are two different things. You're looking at the way, okay, are they going to be able to handle themselves out on the edge? Because this is a big debate with the two top prospects in the offensive line class, Evan Neal from Alabama and Ike Ekwonu, the North Carolina State tackle who's probably going to project ultimately as a guard at the next level. There are a lot of different elements to this that must be diagnosed, and that is outside of hand fighting techniques, how you combat the speed dip that somebody like Harold Landry will use against you, the different kind of things that you use on top of your traits as an offensive lineman to make sure that the damn quarterback can stay upright. It's a very, very complex thing that to cut corners on is something that can really work to your detriment. Because I saw somebody earlier bring up the idea, and I can't remember if it was on Facebook or YouTube earlier today. Must have been on Facebook because I'm not seeing it in the YouTube chat. But basically, the idea of somebody like the mountain of a man, Daniel Falele, right, who is a very interesting prospect. The man is 6'9", 380 pounds. He's a giant of a man, mountain of a man, and has, he's learning the techniques of an offensive lineman in real time. Been able to out-physical, out-muscle people for a long time, but he doesn't have all of the traits that you would need to be a day one or likely even a day two draft prospect. Somebody brought up the idea of drafting him and then rolling the dice with an undraft. Okay, Rob Nell on Facebook Live. What about Falele as the only lineman drafted by the Titans, and they get him in the fourth, and get Vrabel as an underrated free agent? Tyler Vrabel, he means. Nonsense. Pure and utter nonsense. Did you not see your quarterback get sacked 49 times, I believe, last year?
And Tyler Vrabel ain't ending up on this roster.
Mike said it.
Yeah,
Mike said
literally.
31 other teams he can go to.
Said that wouldn't be good for anybody.
Godspeed, son. And here's the thing. Like, Mike getting ahead of it removes any doubt, because there would be awkward conversations about, okay, my dad just cut me. He's an undrafted player. You're not going to get, very rarely, let me say. There have been cases where undrafted free agent linemen have started NFL games before and have had successful careers. I can't say that there's no precedent whatsoever, but that you would want to cut corners with a fourth-round pick, a fourth-round developmental pick when you've got two starting spots available and an undrafted rookie free agent that's the coach's son? What the hell are you talking about? Corey in Hendersonville is next. Hello, Corey.
Hey, Buck. I just had two questions. One is about the tight end draft class here in this draft. I'm curious what you think the Titans will do at tight end, where they could potentially be targeting a tight end in as far as like what round?
Well, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there, Corey, because targeting is the wrong word to use, because without a second-round pick and without knowledge of how the third round is going to break, you can't really – I mean, you can have guys that you like, guys who you've graded and evaluated, but to target a player, that's not necessarily how it goes down. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. But, like, who you guys think might be available in some of these later rounds, like 4th, 5th round, where we have picks at? And then I wanted to bring up a scenario, the possibility of Malik Willis going number 2 overall to the Lions.
Okay. Well, we can give you I'll give you my evaluation of this tight end class and the idea that the Detroit Lions, with an obvious need at quarterback at some point in the near future, could take the first quarterback off the board with the number 2 overall pick. We can talk about that coming up next.
It is 12:03. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica, and welcome to Draft Day. Coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft from Las Vegas starts on Titans Radio at 6 p.m., with the draft officially getting underway at 7. Stay tuned to 104.5 The Zone for coverage throughout the day, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans in the lead-up to that first name being called by Roger Goodell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Titans, of course, picking at 26. Titans picked up the fifth-year option for defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons on Wednesday. That locks Simmons in for $10.7 million in 2023. Simmons made his first career Pro Bowl in 2021 after a career-high 8.5 sacks. Not a lot of movement as far as trades go in the first couple of rounds, although one team in the Titans division is looking to move some picks. According to a report by ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Houston Texans pick at number 3, but are looking to take their number 13 pick and move it into the top 10. If the right player is there, Schefter says the Texans are trying to position themselves to move that second first-round pick to go get him. The Nashville Predators recalled goaltender Connor Ingram from the Milwaukee Admirals on Wednesday, as they will be without UC Saros for the final 2 regular season games of the year. The Preds do have a playoff spot clinched, and it will take them a potential first-round opponent. Will take on a potential first-round opponent tonight at the Colorado Avalanche. That is an 8 p.m. puck drop. The Preds dropped to the second wildcard spot in the West last night as Dallas grabbed a point against Arizona, so 1 point back of Dallas. Nashville does have a game in hand. Finishing in that second wildcard position would mean facing Colorado in the postseason rather than Calgary. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
You heard the lady. It's time to sit and spin. Nothing makes me happier than that one. Welcome into the final hour on this Draft Day edition of the radio show. Lucas Panzica is back there making it happen. We are inviting you to participate with us. 615-737-1045 is how you do so. Who do you think? This is the last opportunity for you to submit your selection for the Tennessee Titans at 26th overall. Who you think they're going to take? 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on that conversation. 615-737-1045. That's the number. So there's a lot of different elements that you can attack this through. Now, we had a caller earlier, Corey in Hendersonville, who had brought up 2 different scenarios for us to discuss. First and foremost, let's start with the tight ends. Now, as we sit here today, not knowing how the first round will play out and whether John Robinson will be able to maneuver in a way that gets them a second-round pick back. No second-round pick because of the Julio Jones situation. We know this. Tight end, second and third round is where the best of them are going to go, right? There's a handful of them that will go on day 2. With, the talent level is pretty much on an even plane. There's no discernibly great tight end that's clearly and obviously better than the rest of them. I would say that, probably as you look at guys who are on day 2 versus day 3, I would say that the first tight end likely to be taken on day 2 would be Trey McBride, the Colorado State tight end. because he's a tight end, but he's also a big-bodied wide receiver. And you can find in him a prospect who can catch, run, and block, which is, of course, critical for the purposes of the Tennessee Titans. I do not believe that Trey McBride is going to be available to them. Now, you can find, for example, a Jelani Woods out of Virginia, the former OK State quarterback commit who transitioned to the tight end position, then transferred from OK State to Virginia. Hugely talented, got a lot of physical traits that just simply you cannot coach. And coming in as a supersized A-plus athlete, you can have there's a lot of potential there for him. And coupled with the idea that he doesn't have to start right away. Austin Hooper will have that job and will likely be in that job with Jeff Swaim as your 3. So you've got a bit of a cushion for whichever rookie tight end that you bring in. Now, I love Jelani Woods as a selection. I love Jeremy Ruckert, the Ohio State tight end, who's, I think, going to be a better pro than he was a college player, just because of opportunity. Now, those two in particular, we'll see how they play out. There are other tight ends who do other things. Greg Dulcich, for example, is not a fit for the Tennessee Titans because blocking is not in his DNA. And as we well know, blocking is the first and foremost responsibility of a Tennessee Titans tight end. That, or if you're Luke Stocker, a 4th and 1 carry on the goal line. Shout out Matt LaFleur. Been a long time since we've seen one of those. But as far as the second question that our guy Corey posed to us, what about the idea of the Carolina Panthers taking a quarterback with the 2nd overall selection? Now, I don't know about that specifically.
You mean the Detroit Lions?
What did I say? Carolina Panthers.
You said the Panthers.
Detroit Lions, correct. Detroit Lions. I would think it near implausible because if Jacksonville does the thing that most people anticipate Jacksonville doing, which is taking a talented player in Trayvon Walker, but somebody who's clearly and obviously going to need a lot of development. I don't know that we would have, if Trayvon Walker is indeed the 1st overall pick, I don't know that we'll have seen a 1st overall pick with as small of a resume as Trayvon Walker has, even as he played for a national championship Georgia defense. Like this, there's just not a lot there yet. Doesn't mean he can't be a good player, but Jacksonville taking a developmental guy with the 1st overall selection would be laugh out loud funny. This is not Myles Garrett that they're taking.
It's crazy because he would have been like the 3rd or 4th best player on that defense last season. Mm-hmm. Speaks to how good that defense is, but also how much of a project he might be.
He's a project, for sure. For sure. And if that situation were to materialize, then Detroit would sprint for Aiden Hutchinson because not only best player available, but also a clear and obvious need because the quarterbacks in your division are Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, and Justin Fields, who you need to have an answer for on the defensive side of the ball, an answer that Detroit did not have last year. Lonzo says, come on, Buck, you're better than this. What, mixing up Carolina and Detroit? No, in fact, I'm not better than this because I just did it. So, tough bleep, Lonzo. But as far as the rest of the quarterback situation plays out, there's 2 different approaches that I think matter for Tennessee. Now, I've advocated is a strong word. I have said that I am comfortable with the idea of them taking a quarterback with the 26th overall pick.
You've endorsed it.
I haven't,
You've endorsed the idea that the Titans taking a quarterback at 26 is not ridiculous.
Endorse even? Well, no, not. You're correct. I have endorsed the idea that it is not a ridiculous idea for them to take, say Desmond Ridder is there, for them to take Desmond Ridder. I am also, full disclosure, I don't root for anything Tennessee Titans related. It's my job. I'm here to do it, right? The only thing that I am actively rooting for Tennessee Titans related, other than for them to win football games because it's good for business, and I would rather talk about a good football team than a stinky football team. The only thing that I'm actively rooting for in this is for them to take a quarterback tonight because the radio would burn tomorrow. And that would give me great delight and great enjoyment because that would be fun. You guys would lose your minds.
A lot of people would be in support of it.
Sure.
But it would be polarizing.
It would be hugely polarizing. I'm rooting for the let me let you in on a dirty little secret, okay? I don't root for what's best or what's worst for your football team. I root for the thing that's going to give me the most fun topic to talk about. That's the only thing I care about. If they take an offensive lineman, I'll figure it out.
So you don't want a wide receiver, right? Like that would be.
No, wide receiver would be fun. I wouldn't hate the idea of a wide receiver by any stretch of the imagination. But I also think that wide receiver or offensive line is not near as polarizing. If you gave me if I had my choice of things, I would want an inside linebacker or a quarterback. You guys lose your minds either way. But you know what? That's good for business. And that is who I am actively in support of at this point. Now, there are a couple of different ways that this can materialize. And we've talked about this at great length this week. And if you want to jump in on the conversation, 615-737-1045 is how you do so. What is the best and worst case scenario for the Tennessee Titans tonight for you? This is what will carry us through this final hour together. But as I sit here analyzing the idea of quarterback specifically, outside of the idea that I just want to watch it burn, right? I think that there are two scenarios that they can take. And we've had two very smart people lay out both of those scenarios in the last couple of days. And I'm going to give you both of those scenarios coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Okay. Best and worst case scenarios for the Titans at 26. What you got? 615-737-1045 is the number. Now, here's what I'll tell you. I'll give you mine first, and then we'll get to a couple of the pundits that we've had. Speaking of pundits, Mike Giardi's Goofy Dome is on my television right now, broadcasting. He's embedded with the New York Jets today, which was probably the worst of the possible assignments. And Giardi tried to church it up, but I think he's a liar, even though the Jets obviously are going to be active at the top of the draft. But best case scenario for the Tennessee Titans, as I see it, as we sit here at 12-19 and change, I think that the best case scenario would be for them to get the hell rid of this 26th overall pick. Get out of there. Hope that the quarterbacks fall. Hope that somebody gets a little itchy at the top of the second. Hope that they give you some draft capital, including a second. If not, I can't imagine it'd be worth multiple seconds because they basically have a second-round pick at 26. But hope that that scenario comes to pass, or that there is a player that unexpectedly falls that would garner some interest at the top of the second that allows you to get the hell out. I think there are great prospects. I think you could find – I would be happy with any number. I would be happy with Treylon Burks. I would be happy with Kenyon Green. I would be happy with Zion Johnson. I would be happy with the Iowa, the Northern Iowa tackle, Trevor Penning. Be happy with that too. All good. But if the best case scenario were to arise, I would say gain additional draft capital, get out of the first round, continue to address your needs in the second, because all of the things that you need will be there for you. Now, the worst case scenario, and I don't want to bang on Tyler Smith unnecessarily, the Tulsa tackle who continues to get mocked to these Titans, by the way. So that can't all be just smoke. There has to be a little bit of fire there. Tyler Smith is not a bad player. He's somebody who you watch him on film. He's got all of the attributes and qualities that you would like an offensive lineman in this particular system to have. But he's a developmental player. And for a team that is already chasing an offensive line rebuild that is now 2 years behind, to take a developmental prospect with the 26th overall selection, to me, would be the worst possible case. Now, any number of you may feel differently, but I think those are the two scenarios that I see as we sit here right now. Now, for somebody like our friend Jason Fitz, who is hosting ESPN's draft coverage live from Las Vegas all 3 days on every one of their digital platforms with Mina Kimes and Dominique Foxworth and our buddy Harry Douglas, whole crew. It's going to be a great time. I always enjoy their draft coverage. For Fitzy, I gave him the worst possible case scenario for the Tennessee Titans at 26. And what did Fitzy lay out for people, Lucas?
You've also got to look at the entire roster and what you're trying to set up for, short-term, long-term, right? Like short-term, right now, Ryan Tannehill is going to make you better than any quarterback that's available in this year's draft today. Long-term, what's better? Taking a roll of the dice on a quarterback that may turn out to be okay, but probably is going to need 2 or 3 years to develop into anything? Or do you make the entirety of your roster better so that even if you're stuck at the quarterback position, you find out this year that Tannehill just isn't who you thought he was going to be. You're stuck. You got nowhere to go. What do you do then? Well, next year, at least if you're stuck with a mid-level quarterback next year, that mid-level quarterback is walking onto a team that has more weapons, has a better foundation, has better pieces around him. Like, I'm all in for remodeling the kitchen in your house, but not if the rest of your house is junk. And not to say that the Titans are junk, but if you have other glaring needs, save the kitchen until you're right at the spot where you can take the best advantage of it. Like, I genuinely believe that Desmond Ridder, and look, I see the tweets from Titans fans all the time. I genuinely believe that in next year's draft class, Desmond Ridder, the way he played right now, would likely be a second or third round pick at best. So you can get a better quarterback in the 20s next year than you can get this year in the 20s.
So that's Jason Fitz saying that his worst case scenario would be a quarterback with the 26th overall selection, because he feels that if you do that, you're punting on immediate impact this year. And he's right, at least in the first round. 615-737-1045. We got Smokey Ben in Nashville who's up first. What's up, Ben?
Hey, Buck, I really appreciate you taking the and calling into this station now. And I love your show. You do great work.
Thank you.
I agree with what you're saying. The Titans need to trade back. We need more draft picks. If we stay, it's the same names you're happy with. Kenyon Green, Trevor Penning, Christian Watson is the name that I love. But I do have to say, you guys are a little off. Inside linebacker is a bigger need than we think. If we can trade back and get more capital, I love me some Leo Chanel. This guy he's Mike Vrabel, except with modern-day athleticism. I mean, look at what the D-line did when we added a piece to help Simmons. When we complete this linebacking core, Vrabel will do amazing things. I'm so glad this draft is on. 20 years for Smokey Ben. 1045 is the best. Thank you, Buck.
Thanks for the call, Ben. I do love Leo Chanel. That's the Wisconsin linebacker who I think is one of the I don't know. He's not a top 50 prospect that Ben has just laid out. And by the way, if you want to jump in, 615-737-1045. I would dispute that the inside linebacker is a pressing need or a greater need than I think. I think there's probably need because, listen, David Long is also in a contract year. Everybody's all bent out of shape about A.J. Brown. Think about the rest of the players that are in a contract year. So A.J. Brown is the second-round pick. Nate Davis, also in a contract year, right guard. You have then Amani Hooker as the fourth-round safety. They did not have Nate Davis third, Amani Hooker fourth as the fourth-round pick. So starting safety, starting right guard, starting wide receiver, all in a contract year. Then you get to the later round, and David Long, as a sixth-round pick in 2019, is also in a contract year. Now, Monty Rice is there. Zach Cunningham restructured his contract, so they'll probably have to eat it for a couple years on Zach Cunningham, who, by the way, played well within this defense and is somebody who Mike Vrabel favors. Now, depending on where he falls in this draft class, I do not dispute the idea that I would like Leo Chanel in this defensive fit because size and speed, they're not the only prerequisite traits for success at the pro level. And he's not necessarily somebody who's going to blow you away with the testing. But 6'2", 250 pounds, he can move. He ran a 4.53 40 and had a 40.5 vertical leap at the combine at Lucas Oil and did well on the bench press too, 34 reps there in Indianapolis. He's one of the better linebackers in this class, but he's not the top of the list, right? So you could afford to take him with a later pick should you accumulate more draft capital for less pressing needs. Robert is in Nashville up next. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Buck, I've figured out John Robinson.
Have
he
you?
He uses a magic 8-ball. So I went and got me one, and this is my prediction. 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. Pickett to Carolina, Willis to the Saints, Ryder to Pittsburgh, and the Titans picked Matt Carroll. And he's a gamer, man. He's a good player. I can't believe that not more people like him, but he's a good dang player. And I also think that 7 wide receivers are going to go in the first round.
7? Jesus.
So, yeah, I really do. I think the top 5 will go within the first 16 or 17 picks. And then you got Kansas City at the end. They need them, and it picked 30 and 31, I think. But that's how I see the draft falling, man. I have read every mock draft for the last 3 months. I mean, I have an IQ on the draft of about 3 million. So Matt Carroll to the Titans. That's my pick, and there you go. Have a good
That was really good. For all the wrong reasons. Now, do we take him at his word that he's got an IQ of 3 million on the NFL draft when Desmond Ryder and Matt Carroll are 2 of the 4 quarterbacks who are going to go in the first round?
Right.
That was delightful. That may be my favorite call we've gotten all week.
But I think my favorite sentence that we've gotten in a long time is I have an IQ on the draft of about 3 million, and I think Matt Carroll will be drafted by the Titans. But thank you for the call.
So that's Desmond Ridder and Matt Corral for the uninitiated, those of you who do not have an IQ of 3 million on the NFL draft. Yeah, I don't. The Corral thing is interesting. It really is. Because when we talk to because Daniel Jeremiah, all right, so they've got his top 5 quarterbacks up on the screen. Pickett 1, Willis 2, Corral 3, Howell 4, Desmond Ridder 5, according to Daniel Jeremiah, who's, of course, the NFL Media Group's top draft analyst. And I think it depends on landing spot. I don't think it's exclusive to the skill set of the player. I think you have to account where they go as well as who they are. I think that we've talked about that at great length. The philosophy of these teams is not nearly accounted for as much as it needs to be to get a proper read on this draft. But, I mean, this is here's why it's interesting, right? Because Lucas turned his nose up at the anonymous executive that told Adam Schefter this is the craziest draft in 30 years. And Luke is probably right to do so. Like I think there's a little bit of hyperbole there. But here's the kind of thing that stands out to me about this draft in particular, and I'll explain what I mean and why it affects Matt Corral and specifically the Tennessee Titans later on. So, Lucas, you've already heard this number from me before, but if I asked you for a percentage by fraction, so like 1/2, 1/3, 1/5, how many of the NFL teams do not have a first-round draft pick this year?
I want to say, I'm doing math in my head.
I know it's tough. That's why I asked you the way that I did.
Like a quarter, right? Like a fourth.
No, you are correct. One quarter of NFL teams are sitting out first round. Sitting out the first round as we currently sit here. Chicago, Cleveland, Denver, Indy, Vegas, Miami, San Francisco, and the Rams are all sitting out the first round of the draft. That's a record by any stretch of the imagination. Now, by the same token, Rhett Bryan and I talked about this yesterday. A record 8 teams have 2 first-round picks in the NFL draft this year. Now, 6 of those 8 that got rid of their first-rounders or traded their first-rounders for anything, 6 of those traded their first-round picks to acquire quarterbacks, right? The Rams are among them. You look at the situation for, Indianapolis did it too, unfortunately for them. San Francisco did as well, given the fact that they had to move up to go get Trey Lance last year. But 6 of those 8 teams traded their first-round picks to make sure that they could acquire quarterbacks. Do you know when the last time the Rams had a first-round pick is?
It wasn't Goff.
It was Goff.
It was?
2016 is the last time that the Los Angeles Rams had a first-round pick.
Amazing.
And he was first overall.
And Jeff Fisher.
Yeah, that's right.
Coach Jeff Fisher and Coach Mack on the Rams staff last time they had a first. That's amazing.
So now the Rams have done particularly well with this, and there's a variety of reasons why that goes well. Now I want you to hear, Lucas, do we have the audio? I know we have 2 bits of audio from Sheil Kapadia, yes? One on the Rams draft strategy, why teams are trending this way. Let's play that clip from Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic first.
Well, I think teams can't mistake their franchise for the Rams. I mean, the Rams have had a couple big advantages. Number one, their coach, Sean McVay, has shown he can kind of do more with less on offense. Not that they haven't had talent, but, man, they were a top 10 offense with Jared Goff for multiple years. They got to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. That's like the advantage you want from your coaching staff, specifically an offensive coach who can figure out ways to scheme it up. And the other thing that probably doesn't get to, 2 other things that don't get talked about enough with the Rams. One is they've been incredibly healthy over the last, 2, 3, 4 years, whether you credit their sports science stuff and their training or whatever, or whether it's just a spell of good luck. That has been huge for them. And then number 3, I think one thing people forget about the Rams is that it's not like they're not just sitting out the draft completely. If you look at it over the last 5 years, they've made 45 picks in the draft. That's tied for 5th most in the NFL. So do they say, F them picks in the first round? Yeah, absolutely. They acquire veterans and trade those first-round picks. But in the middle rounds, they do something really smart, which is they say, let's draft for volume. Let's get a lot of bites at the apple, and let's make sure, we have opportunities to fill out our roster so that it's not just a bunch of stars and then a bunch of guys who can't play. So they found ways to get competent play from a lot of those guys they picked in the middle rounds. And so I think if you're going to give up those first-round picks, that's something you absolutely have to do is stock up on those picks in rounds, I would say 2 through 4, 2 through 5.
So that's how the Rams have done it, right? It's not just, as Shield said, F them picks, which is, of course, the famous Les Snead T-shirt that he wore to the draft. You see the feature-length movie promo that the Rams put out on their social media account?
I did not. I saw it, but I did not bother to watch it.
You didn't watch it? It was pretty funny, honestly. Like, credit. I mean, they're in Hollywood. The least that they could do is put together a good draft promo. But yeah, F them picks is the strategy, but only the first-round picks because they're volume drafting on days 2 and 3. So it accounts for anything, and frankly, far greater value based on how Les Snead has done the model. Now, also, you have a coach in Sean McVay who can do a lot of the heavy lifting. You have a coach who is of above-average abilities on the offensive side of the ball that can cobble together a top 10 offense with a guy at quarterback who we all believe is largely crap, respectfully to Jared Goff. But for other teams who are looking at this, the Tennessee Titans, I think it makes sense this year specifically to do so for the same reasons. Because here's my thing. I largely think they have their quarterback. I would love for them to take a quarterback today. I would love for that to happen. I would love for there to be riots in the streets. I think that makes for exceptional sports talk radio content. And like I said, I'm rooting for just personal, selfish self-interest here.
So what do you not want? Like, what would cause the least amount of riot? Be wide receiver, right?
No, offensive line. Like a left guard. Left guard, okay, left guard. You know why that's worse? Because Roger Saffold was a tremendous quote, and offensive linemen are rarely great quotes. So I would, for a number of selfish reasons, I would not like an offensive lineman. But because I have zero investment, well, that's not true. I do have investment in the success of the football team because we do a local radio show, and if the football team sucks, you guys don't want to listen to the football team.
But it's funny because a few weeks ago we were talking about offensive line as if that's what would make people angry, incensed, right?
Well, that's stupid.
But it's been a need the whole time.
Yeah. What's our show slogan, Lucas? What's our show slogan?
Not getting sacked is sexy.
Not getting sacked is sexy.
Right.
This
but
is
I feel like people have come around where I feel like a collective realization with the fan base. Okay, yeah, they need an offensive lineman.
Just go get a left guard. Just don't keep it simple, stupid. Go get the offensive lineman. Go get the grunting, drooling, violent offensive lineman to go play in front of your quarterback who would like to be kept off his ass 49 times as he was last year in ways that were clear and obvious to everyone. Now, again, that does not suit the purposes of content, but I will grit and bear it if I must, because that's the only rooting interest that I have tonight. But at the same time, I think there are completely logical reasons for a selection of a quarterback. And I want you to hear, again, Sheil Kapadia explain why the quarterback would make sense for the Tennessee Titans today.
Listen, if they fall in love with one of these quarterbacks and they think the guy, whether it's Desmond Ridder or if Malik Willis falls, if they think one of those guys really has the upside to be the guy to lead them into the next era, then I would have no issue with going ahead and taking them. I just wonder at the place that they're picking whether their evaluations will say, yeah, this is worth it, or whether they'll say, you know what, we signed Ryan Tannehill, we signed Derrick Henry a couple years ago. Let's give this thing one more shot in 2021 and, draft somebody who can help us in the immediate future, but also can be a part of this team going forward in the long run. And so that's why I gave them Trevor Penning for some offensive line help. I just look at them as a team that probably wants to take one more swing at this thing with the current core. But I would not criticize them if they fall in love. To me, quarterback right now in the NFL, it's all about taking big swings. I mean, if you're shooting just for competency and you're using resources on that, you're making a mistake. Because right now, most of the teams in the NFL, you can talk yourself into them winning 9 or 10 games with their quarterback. Any team right now could have Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. You're not going to be throwing a parade for those guys, but those guys can play on Sunday and, make you around 500 or better than 500 team. I think what you have to do is find these guys who can really elevate everyone around them. And so, again, if they feel like Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, one of those guys falls to them, and they feel like those guys have that ceiling, even though they're not sure they're going to reach that ceiling, then I would not fault them for going with the quarterback.
Yeah, those two guys aren't going to elevate this roster in ways that Ryan Tannehill cannot right now. That's the thing.
Wait, when you say those two guys, Ritter and who?
Willis. Ritter and or frankly any of them. Here's the thing. Ryan is Ryan Tannehill a better quarterback than the top 5 quarterbacks coming out in this draft class? Yes or no?
Yes.
How much better is he than the top 5 quarterbacks in this class?
We have no idea.
Right. But as we sit here today, those guys do not give the Tennessee Titans a better chance to elevate their roster than Ryan Tannehill presently does. Now, I think at a certain point you can start to have that conversation because Malik Willis, depending on how the development goes, has the ability to be a better player at the position than Ryan Tannehill is, a more dynamic player at the position. By the way, do you know Ryan Tannehill's the second oldest quarterback in the AFC?
Yeah, I saw you tweeting about that yesterday. That is crazy to think about.
He's 33 years old. He's the second oldest quarterback in the AFC.
I mean, he's one of the longest tenured in the AFC.
It's just crazy. Well, Ben is gone. Who else departed the AFC?
Derek Carr is the longest tenured in the AFC.
Yeah, because he spent his entire career there. And Matt Ryan, who's just gotten here, is now the oldest quarterback.
Brady, obviously.
Well, yeah, but that's the NFC.
Right, I'm saying he moved from the AFC, like the amount of quarterbacks that have left the AFC that were there long term.
Yeah.
Are dwindling.
We've seen a seismic shift in this conference, and now Ryan Tannehill is both one of the longest tenured, coming up on year 4 in Tennessee, and also one of the most veteran quarterbacks at the position in this conference, with Matt Ryan being the oldest at 36 years old. 33 is not like grandpa, dinosaur, must move on from quarterback. I mean, Joe Flacco is still out here getting paychecks in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Now he's 3 years older than Ryan Tannehill, but you largely get my point. Like Ryan Tannehill, to prepare for the future, this is not Aaron Rodgers at 38. This is not Tom Brady at 44. This is a very, very salvageable situation. And if you feel that he can still elevate you above where the rest of these guys can, then I think the case for taking a quarterback is moot. Last call for phone calls. We'll do some polls. Then we'll wrap up and get out of here because it's draft day. And I got work to do at the facility later. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Let's wrap it up, shall we? Draft week, baby. Almost done. Almost there. Home stretch. So, couple of notes on the way out the door. I'm going to be at the practice facility, obviously, for the next 3 days. Titans Radio is going to have great coverage tonight, 6 p.m. Central Time, Thursday and Friday. Mike Keith, Coach Mack, Rep Bryan, and Ramon Foster was a part of it last year, I think, for the first round. Big fella's going to do it again for the next 2 days. So I'm sure Ramon has done great due diligence, and I'm sure Ramon is excited for the prospect of them picking an offensive lineman because that's a sweet spot for my guy. Now, I'll be at the facility. I'll be producing a lot of written content, and speaking of draft shows, we are doing at A to Z Sports a draft live stream show. Austin Stanley, Jack Gentry, and Austin Huff are going to be hosting it, and I am going to pop in for a live hit from the facility. It's probably going to be, around a little after midnight by the time I wrap up with press conferences and stuff. But I know I'm going to do like a 10-minute live hit tonight and tomorrow night from the facility as a part of the A to Z Sports draft show. So that'll be a lot of fun, and you can look forward to that on all of the A to Z streaming platforms. Anything else? Polls.
Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face. I don't know where the Batman is. Doesn't matter because here's Lucas Panzica on the Buck Reising Show. Update the polls, Lucas. Here we go.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it to you when it gets manufactured. What is the most likely situation to happen to the Titans in the first round? Clay Phillips says trade out.
I think that is the most likely. Well, no, the most likely is an offensive lineman, to be honest with you. Oh, we didn't use that Greg Cosell audio.
You said that was your best case scenario, not the most likely.
The best case scenario is to trade out. The most likely scenario is an offensive lineman at 26. Which of those offensive linemen? TBD. But if it's one of the two that we had Greg break down on the install yesterday, then we'll play that audio for you tomorrow.
Justin says most likely is they'll draft someone who has injuries that has major upside. That'll be our guy.
I'm good on that. Thank you very much. Sorry, J-Rob.
KB says draft one of the guards.
Well, there are, we need more specifics, but yeah, I would be fine with Kenyon Green or Zion Johnson.
And
26.
Robert says most likely scenario, he falls asleep before they get to the pick.
I'm telling you, man, I think they're going to use every minute of their 10 minutes tonight, every one of these damn NFL teams. It's going to be a long broadcast. I feel it in my soul.
Feels like it drags on longer each and every year.
Oh, well, it's especially now. Vegas, they've had now 5 years to prepare for the NFL draft being in Vegas because it was supposed to happen in 2020 and it all got nuked. So I think it's going to be a whole, they've actively been trying to figure out how to outdo Nashville for 3 years. It's going to be quite a production.
I feel for our friends on the morning show on J. Martin Ramon having to stay up for that. What's the most critical need the Titans must address today? 49% say offensive line, 39% say wide receiver, 12% say quarterback. V-Love says PA.
Vincent Love's campaign to remove the public address announcer from his spot. He's doing this on behalf of you.
Takes no breaks.
He's doing this for you.
I love what I do on Sundays.
Okay, well, if you want the PA guy fired, apparently this is your show.
Who's the best overall player in the NFL draft? Alan says Tyler Vrabel. Colton says Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati.
Yeah, Ahmad Sauce Gardner is a tremendous name.
Yes, that is the number one draft name, 1,000%. Can you think of a better?
Oh, there is one.
Oh, that would have been a good poll.
There is one that caught my attention. This is going to drive me crazy. It's going to be bad radio for me to think about it on the air. But there is. Smoke Monday.
Smoke Monday from Auburn.
Smoke Monday, right. A good one.
But where does he kind of project?
Oh, not as a top pick.
Day 3, right?
Yeah, day 3 guy.
Yeah, that's a great name. Both corners. What is your worst case scenario for the Titans today? Puka says drafting a quarterback, especially Malik Willis, who has even more red flags.
Red flags.
Nothing off the field.
No, I don't think that's a fair characterization of Malik Willis' situation. Best case scenario for us is that they draft a quarterback. Worst case scenario is Poor Tyler Smith, the Tulsa tackle, who's just getting dragged unnecessarily just because he's like the fourth tackle that's left.
Yeah, that's what Cam says. Worst case is both stud interior offensive linemen are gone, Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson, and they do end up drafting a tackle like Tyler Smith.
Yeah,
Anthony says anything other than an offensive pick is the worst case scenario.
Nah, I mean, like I said, if Jermaine Johnson's sitting there at 26 as the best edge rusher in the class, I would be so happy to see that come to Tennessee, even as I understand that it's not a dire need.
And Thomas says that worst case scenario is there's traffic and we can't get anyone on the phone in time for our pick.
Well, that's not how it works anymore, fortunately, especially in the digital age. We've come a long way since, the need for some, overweight equipment guy. Well, that's mean. I don't know that the equipment guy is overweight, and I don't want to make it about anybody specifically in the Titans facility, but I'm just saying, like an equipment guy who's tasked with delivering the card to whoever hands it to Roger Goodell for the first round, like we're past that.
Who's the most likely team in the modern age to run out of time before submitting a draft pick and just not get the pick?
The Lions.
Really? No, it's the Jags, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
First overall pick, they just run out of time because they're arguing about Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker.
Oh, Shad Khan calling in from somewhere overseas. No, you take the Michigan edge player. Damn it.
Is the Preds season over if UC Saros is done? 84% say yes.
Yeah, the rest of you are hopeless optimists, and I can't do anything with you.
There's the polls.
That's the show. That's going to do it for us today. The content, the conversation, it continues right here. Blaine and Mickey, 3HL broadcasting live from Buffalo Wild Wings. Then Titans radio coverage takes over at 6 p.m. tonight. I'm not doing prime time tonight because I'll be at the facility. I'll pop on the A to Z Sports Draft live show. That'll be a great time. And we'll do it all again tomorrow. Coach Mack will be here. Be great. See you then.